300 years of New Orleans and 60 years of WWL-TV. This is an Eyewitness News special presentation.
The newest look in TV, Channel 4, WWL-TV, Loyola University of the South.
This is WWL-TV New Orleans, where Eyewitness Camera brings you instant news.
Bill Elder. Don Westbrook with the weather. From Channel 4 Television, this is Eyewitness News.
Good evening. This is the 5 o'clock news for Tuesday, June the 1st.
This Saturday coming up.
7:52. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey, I'm Karen Swenson. This just into the Channel 4 newsroom.
It's an update on how he feels now after
Here, an employee of internet giant Google flies around southeast Louisiana, and we're watching all this moisture.
Senators are trying to overcome party divisions. Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you back there in a half hour, 6 o'clock, the first of CBS TV.
Channel 4 celebrates 60 years of broadcasting.
Good evening and welcome to a party 60 years in the making. Tonight we are celebrating 6 decades of Channel 4 with the almost impossible job of trying to fit 60 years of history into 60 minutes.
It is so much fun, and we couldn't think of a better group of people to do it with. We're going to take a walk down memory lane tonight with what is truly an all-star group of Channel 4 legends. Angela Hill, the undisputed queen of New Orleans television, who joined the Channel 4 staff back in 1975. And local TV, and particularly Channel 4, have been the better for it ever since. Dennis Waltering, who loved Channel 4 so much he worked here twice and still does stories that air on Eyewitness News. He was first hired in 1977, then left for Philadelphia and returned in 1994.
And someone else who joined the station in 1977, the same week as Dennis actually, Eric Paulson, the king of morning television in New Orleans. And just ask him, because he'll tell you. In addition to co-anchoring the morning and noon news, Eric, of course, also co-hosted PM Magazine in the 1980s. And Sally Ann Roberts, the shining light of morning news in the city for nearly 30 years, and a member of the staff also since 1977. That was the lucky year, who will tell us the real story of Eric Paulson later on.
And how about Bill Capo, who joined the staff in 1980 and solved your problems for decades as the action reporter. And while he worked here for 36 years, he also grew up watching Channel 4, so he has a lot of memories of the early days, too. As does Meg Ferris, who's been at Channel 4 since 1981 and, like Bill, has served in many roles, including as the city's only TV medical reporter, and so much more.
Man, an all-star cast. Well, we want to start tonight by asking each of you how you came to Channel 4, your first impressions of the station. Bill Capo, I want to start with you.
I want to be first on this one.
Let's go.
I remember telling David Cuthbert, the Picayune's TV guy, when he interviewed me, that I had arrived at broadcast heaven. I felt that way in 1980 all the way to today. And I remember my very first day here, August 4th, 1980. I was never stopped all day long. There was a fire. I did a live shot at noon. I did reports at 5 and 6. We dashed back, and I went and sat on the set at 10 o'clock. You remember the update desk we had on the set? I'll give you all a little secret. It was, they paid it. We were happy to come in at 10 o'clock. They paid us $25 every time. They paid you? But you, they obviously didn't. But no, I'm sitting there, and I'm still trying to make sense of what's going on. I look over. I'm sitting across from Garland and Angela. I was stunned, hardly able to speak. You have always been such an incredible beauty, but I will tell you, I was afraid to shake your hand. because you are so delicate. I thought I was going to break your hand.
Well,
To be here, and then I met Paulson and everything. and Dennis and I used to work together on Sundays. He was the anchor and I was the reporter. Boy, did we have some fun.
We did a lot of work.
Before we talk about that, let's get Angela's thoughts too. You started in Texas.
I started in Texas, my second station, a good station. Somebody from New Orleans was watching, and I didn't know it, who was very good friends with J. Michael Early, who was the general manager, who called and said, "Would you please send us a tape?" Well, I didn't know how to do tape. These were the film days. So I could never get it together. Phil Johnson called and said, "Please." I said, "I'm so sorry. We're going to fly you up. Bring your film." And I came up on a weekend. We literally rolled the film like this, watched a story. They cut a tape. I was terrified, and I thought, heaven. This place is it. And this place is it not just because of the phenomenal people who worked here and the phenomenal city we work in, but because they were so forward thinking. You come up with an idea, you want to go to Europe, you want to do this, and bring it home. It was done. It was better than network ever could be.
Yep.
And Dennis, what brought you here? I know you came in from Fargo, and you've had 2 names.
Well, when I was in Fargo, and I heard about a job opening, a weekend anchor job opening, and so I sent a tape, and about a month went by, and nothing happened. So I called Phil Johnson, and I said, what's going on? Do you need another tape or anything? He said, that tape was all scrambled. Can you send me another tape? So I was a weekend anchor in Fargo, and a Monday night I was going to go in and make another tape. Around 8 o'clock, I get a phone call from Phil. He says, "When can you be here, babe?" And so I came down, and I was so glad. Fargo's a wonderful place, but I was so glad to leave, and especially to come to New Orleans. My God, what a great place! And this station was phenomenal. I went out on my first story. Phil had talked to me about my name, Woltering. He said it's a little complicated. He said we have this guy Garland Robinette. People don't know his name. They call him
Robin Garland.
Robin Garland, get it all mixed up. So I go out on my first story, and I come back and they say, "Did you do a stand-up close where I speak to the camera and give my name at the end?" And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "What name did you use?" I said, "I used my name." Just come into Phil's office. So they said, "We're thinking about changing it maybe to Walton." There was a show on called The Walton Zone. And then they said, your middle name is Robert. We're thinking about Robert, but we just hired this young woman, who's Sally Ann Roberts. That might be a little confusing. So how about if we just cut off the ing? So I was Dennis Wolter. But everyone got it wrong. Garland kept calling me Walters. People called me Waldron.
Garland couldn't get his own name right.
Waterman. So when I came back the second time, it was Woltering.
Really cool. And Eric, you actually earned your title as king, right? We're going to give it to you because you started the morning news here.
Yeah, back in September of 1977.
Wow.
We were running, I think, the Lone Ranger before then. And then Channel 6 had done a morning news, and they decided they wanted to do a morning news show. So then producer Phil Grossman and I, in my living room, worked out the whole format for the morning news. It ran 45 minutes in the beginning. It was just me in the beginning. And then maybe half a year after that, we went to 7 o'clock and we added Don Westbrook. And it was Don and me for years, and then I went off to PM Magazine. Andre Trevine and John Quaintance took over the morning show, and then when PM ended, I came back in the morning. Well, I actually went to weekends after you left, and then stayed there for 6 months, then came back on the Eyewitness Morning News in 1985.
With a great producer, if I recall.
Yeah, your husband.
And our sweet Sally, what I love about your story is that Angela actually plays a big role in you coming here.
Well, I owe everything. This woman is a treasure, treasure.
I was working every other weekend. I anchored a newscast at WDAM in East Butchie, Mississippi. And one day I went back to my little apartment and the phone rang. And it was Phil Johnson. He said, "Hello, this is Phil Johnson, WWL-TV, and I've heard about you and your work, and I would love to see a tape." I didn't know exactly how he even heard of me. And when I got to his office, he told me about you telling him about me.
Because I had seen you, and you were so talented then. And I remember going back to Phil saying, "Man, if you're looking for another wonderful female, there's this great woman."
Oh, and let me tell you something. When I told my family that I was going to work at WWL-TV, my sister Robin, she piped up, "You mean you're going to be working with Angela Hill?"
You got to think of the time then, what Channel 4 was. Channel 4 was such a powerhouse then.
Yeah.
It was like the Tiffany network.
And I absolutely, Angela, you are brilliant. And you're also a brilliant light, and you've inspired so many young girls like Robin to go into broadcast journalism. You've inspired so many, and the fact that you were such an angel, that you would see me on television as raw as I was, and tell Phil Johnson about me, that says a lot about who you are.
What I saw then, I see now.
Oh, thank you, Angie.
I'm going to say all of you are the cream of the crop, that's for sure. And Meg, a lot of people may know you started in the 80s, but I bet you very few people know that your first time on Channel 4 was way before that. I didn't know this until today.
I didn't either.
It was back in 1963. Actually, I have a Phil Johnson story. So the Johnsons were dear friends of the Farrises, and his daughter was a good friend of mine. We went to school together. And when I went to Ole Miss and I got into journalism school, I started calling Mr. Phil, as we called him, and said, send me scripts. So he would send me Angela Hill scripts at Ole Miss, and I'd sit in my dorm room and I'd practice being Angela Hill. So when I got back to New Orleans after I graduated, he hired me as a desk assistant. But I remember all of you always being so just applauding my, my career and to move forward. Always, always so supportive. So anyway, Mr. Phil changed, and then we had Jim Boyer, who was the news director, and they started this new policy. No interns, no desk assistants can go on the air and be a reporter, and I wanted to be a reporter so badly. He said, you have to have on-air experience before you can become a reporter at Channel 4. So I took my little black and white picture of me in a romper room in this very studio with my hair in poppy-eyes when I was 5 years old, and in Farris kind of sarcasm and humor, I went and I put that picture on his desk and I said, Mr. Boyer, I have experience in a major market. He did not laugh.
Oh my God. He hired you.
Well, yes. Well, Mr. Phil hired me, but yes, I worked my way up. So.
Absolutely. Thank heaven.
Yeah. Oh,
thank heaven for all of us who love medical reporting. Yes.
All right, as we said, we are going to try to cover 60 years of Channel 4 history in 60 minutes, or less now, because we're down to about 50.
Oh my goodness. Natalie is here with us now, though, to take us back to that first night on air for Channel 4 60 years ago this week. Natalie?
Well, guys, it was September 7th, 1957, and television had only been in New Orleans for about 10 years. The lineup that night included Gunsmoke, The Jimmy Durante Show, and the Miss America pageant. But first, at 6:30 that night, a special program introduced Channel 4 to New Orleans.
The newest look in TV, Channel 4, WWL-TV, Loyola University of the South.
The call letters were already legendary from a radio station known nationwide. But there was still a lot of new to celebrate on Saturday night, September 7th, 1957, when WWL-TV signed on the air. A special program celebrated the launch of Channel 4, owned and operated by Loyola University and the Jesuits, who had made WWL Radio into a powerhouse station.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Father W. Patrick Donnelly, and I'm president of Loyola University. Tonight is a memorable event in the history of WWL and Loyola University. In fact, it goes back deep in history. Back to the year 1922, when in March of that year, the first radio broadcast in this part of the country originated from the physics department of Loyola University.
The opening night program originated from the new studios, built in a converted 7-Up bottling plant. The show featured a jazz band and a performance by trumpeter Al Hurt, who had made a name for himself on WWL Radio in the 1940s.
You noticed a little bit of the Rampart Street parade in there. Well, something new has been added to Rampart Street. It's 1024 North Rampart, and we'd like you folks to come down and see our very beautiful studios.
Opening night also brought Mayor Chep Morrison to Channel 4 studios.
May I say that for 35 years, I don't think anyone will contradict this fact, Loyola University has been giving superior radio coverage to our city and to the South. 35 long years. And now tonight, they're going to give, I'm sure, henceforth, superior telecasting to this area and to the South.
Many of the earliest stars of Channel 4 made the transition to TV from radio. One of them was Henry Dupree. To many, he was like a member of the family, an uncle known as Uncle Henry. His Popeye and Pals show became a long-running favorite from day one.
Tell the people about your show, Popeye and Pal.
Oh, fine, will do. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor of putting on something the near and dear to my heart, a program for children. Every child on the show will be seen and heard, and all those wonderful cartoons. Popeye, Porky Pig, Daffy Duck, Tweety, Sylvester, and many, many others, too, every day.
It was cartoons for the kids.
Come on out, Jill.
And a daily show for their parents, hosted by pioneering female broadcaster Jill Jackson.
You know, they say that one picture is worth 10,000 words. And believe me, I'd need many times 10,000 words to tell you how hard everybody at WWL has worked, how long we've waited, and how happy we are tonight.
As we mentioned earlier, this is an all-star group of Channel 4 icons from over the years. So to mark the occasion, we commissioned artist Alex Harvey to do a live painting in the studio as we're doing the show tonight. And as we've been talking, you've been working and painting on yourself, it seems.
Oh, it's just a side effect, baby. But, you know, I was clearing my storm drain earlier. That's what happened.
Is that what it was?
Oh, yeah. We got to make sure we're ready.
I like the outfit. Did you buy it like this?
Oh, no. It comes clean. And then, like every 4 months, I'll paint live at Jazz Fest or at a music event, usually Flow Tribe or The Quickening or something. And I'll grab my 2 brushes to the crowd and just go all over the suit. But then I try and keep it clean after that for a while, you know.
That is too much fun. All right, so you are working on this tonight, which is super exciting. You've already done some. How do you decide where to start? I see you've done myself and Bill Capo.
They all start with a little yellow line across the middle, but then I went with the top figure. Baby, you got that pink on, girl. You know I'm gonna take you first.
Look, you gave me more body than I've ever had in life, so I'm not mad at you.
I do plastic surgery, I do breast implants, I do hair transplants. I'm the cheapest doctor
You're
ever gonna
hilarious.
meet.
Can you give Eric Paulson a really large head?
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you. Okay, what about the background? Why'd you start with that, and what stood out for you there?
Well, you know, you guys had such a beautiful set today that I really wanted to make sure we got all these things here, from the flags to the paintings to the little TV over here and all y'all's awards, and then of course the 60th anniversary. Had to get that in there.
You gotta get that in there. How long does it take you to do one of these?
Well, you know, usually a couple hours, something like that. I paint weddings a lot, so that's kind of a timeline situation. But if I'm on stage at, you know, Champion Square, it's like 45-minute set, so it's real quick.
This is so wonderful to have. What I think is great is it's really going to capture the energy, because this is such a special moment for us.
You know, one of the things about paintings that's so awesome is that they're memory holders. So every time you guys see this, you're going to think of today. You know? And it's like music. You know, when you see the painting, it reminds you of what's going on when the painting happened.
Well, you are doing a great job so far, Alex. We're going to check in with you throughout the show. Guys, this is going to be fun. We'll show off the final product at the end.
Awesome.
Coming up, Saturdays meant 2 things at Channel 4. John Pila and Morgus the Magnificent. Plus, remembering the news team that was second to none as Channel 4 celebrates 60 years.